You're listening to the Truth About Fur podcast, your home for truth about the fur trade in Canada and around the world. The Truth About Fur podcast is a co-production of Blood Origins Canada and the Fur Institute of Canada.
I'm going to apologize in advance for the fan sound in the background, but if I try and turn down the air conditioning right now, my wife will murder me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because it's like 42 with the Humidex here today. It's gross.
Okay. So that I don't hear anything right now.
Oh,
so
okay, perfect.
We'll go with it. So
I hear it, but maybe I just hear it in my own head.
Possibly.
You hear the voices too, right?
The voices. Yeah, that doesn't qualify as air conditioning. Voices in your head.
They tell me to burn things.
All right, we're ready to go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, you traveled all the way out to Edmonton and back since the last episode to the AGM, which I couldn't make, but I saw a lot of social media stuff. I've seen some conversations from trapping organizations in BC go about, like some good stuff happening nationally with people wanting to get together and do more throughout the year as organizations. So why don't you give us the full debrief?
For sure.
Of the AGM.
Yeah, after spending 6 months of reminders in the in the stinger at every episode, now I can say it's finally happened. The FIC AGM 2025 is in the books. It was a bit of a wild and crazy start to things, as on I think it was Sunday evening, I was getting messages from some of my board members and my executive assistant saying, "Hey, the hotel has no power. There's been a fire." So at very much the 11th hour, we had to pick up everything, move next door to a different hotel. Kudos fully deserved to Diana Bernard, my executive assistant, and the good folks at the Delta South Edmonton for accommodating us and letting us put on a 100-person event on like 2 hours notice. Wow. So I mean, we were lucky in that it was at the start of the week. We have some other meetings that happen before the actual AGM itself, so there weren't 100 people there waiting for a room, but it was pretty stressful there for a little bit. This is now 2 out of the last 3 FIC AGMs have involved an electrical fire. 2 years ago in Whitehorse, like an hour before the banquet, there was an electrical fire in the banquet room. So if anybody out there is a firefighter and wants to take out an FIC membership, we really could use the expertise next year.
If anyone out there works for the insurance company that gives the Fur Institute its commercial general liability insurance policy, I will edit.
please stop listening now.
Out of the show.
But,
so there's a point where things aren't coincidence, right? Like, so, all those stories where it's like all of these arson things, and it turns out like someone from the fire department was the arsonist. Those things. So,
my father is an electrician, but I know nothing about electrical systems.
But no, why you start cause fires.
Yeah. But it was a great week in Edmonton. We were out there for a few days, like I say, a few days of meetings before the actual FIC AGM. So we have our annual meeting jointly with the Canadian Fur Bearer Management Committee, which is all the provincial and territorial fur managers. So we had a couple of great days of meetings with them. And something that was really exciting that I was really interested in that happened at this AGM that hasn't happened in many years, that no one's put a precise number on it, but many years anyway, was we actually had a afternoon long meeting at the FIC AGM the day before the festivities, where we invited all the provincial and territorial trappers associations. So there's 11 provincial and territorial trappers associations, the 10 provincial associations, plus the Yukon Trappers Association. We had 6 out of 11 in attendance, so passing grade. And those that weren't there sent their regrets, wish they could have been there. The guy they would have sent to the meeting couldn't come, that kind of stuff. So It was great. We had BCTA was there, Alberta Trappers obviously were there, SAS Trappers, Ontario Fur Managers, the FDGQ, Fédération des Trappeurs Gestionnaires du Québec, was there, and a couple folks from here at home at Trappers Association Nova Scotia. So we had coast to coast representation from the Trappers Associations, and it was really an open and honest discussion. It wasn't, here's an FIC meeting and here's an FIC agenda and here's what we want you to talk about. It was really an open forum for the Trappers Association.
Nice.
To talk to each
That's
other.
what everybody wants.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of a here's the agenda, roundtable introductions. Everybody gets a couple minutes to say their piece about what's going on in their province, and then roundtable discussion. So it was really great, really positive. Great to hear from everybody coast to coast about the issues they're facing. And, I'm lucky because I get to talk to all these people on the regular anyway, and I get to go and visit their rendezvous and their AGMs and their events. But it's not every day that folks get to deal with the Trappers Associations, other than maybe the Trappers Association in the provinces next door. Right? Like there's not a whole lot of opportunities for TANs and SAC trappers to be at the same event. So it was really great seeing some of the unique issues that people are facing, things like the Fisher issue in BC that we've talked about a little bit here in the past, some of the very specific stuff, and then some of the stuff that everybody is facing of how do we better connect with our members? How do we deliver trappers ed? How do we promote trapping, kind of R3 type stuff? How do we make sure there are more trappers on the landscape, or at least maintain our current numbers? Something that we've talked about a lot in the past is, the aging out of our trapper population. A lot of great ideas around the table on things we can do as trappers and things we can do as associations, and some homework for the FIC, things where they're like, this is something that the FIC could do that would really help all of us is XYZ. So that was really exciting. That was really great. We'll continue to have some of these discussions, hopefully regularly here over the next little while, and hopefully get everybody back together at our next AGM for another meeting, and hopefully 11 out of 11 at the next one. And or maybe we'll work our way up. 6 this year, we'll get 9 next year, 11. We'll keep working towards it. And
once people are able to connect face to face, especially if you don't know your colleague on the East Coast or the West Coast or something like that, and you sit down together and have a beer later, or whatever, that type of relationship sort of forged in the meeting situation like that can lend itself throughout the year to mass communication by emails, people chiming in, or like your virtual calls or something like that, just to maintain that and stay on top of, like a hot issue or, a trending story or something like that. So, but I think you need that people got to get together first.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said that in the meeting. I was like, there's going to be great things that come out of this sit down meeting, but like the real value of this meeting is where each is at each other on Facebook or get each other's cell phone numbers, and the unofficial informal conversations that will happen over the next few days after the meeting's over. So
the real stuff happens.
Yeah, exactly. That's when the real work doesn't happen at the table. In the boardroom, it happens around the table at the bar afterwards. So no, it was great. We then had a kind of a social activities day. We went out to Beaver Hills Sporting Clays. They set up a great afternoon for some of us. Went out there. I had never shot sporting clays before. I was fully prepared to make a complete embarrassment of myself, and I shot second in my group. So I had full on beginner's luck in sporting clays. And now I got to figure out where here in Nova Scotia I can go do sporting clays, because I think I'm now.
I went to the one at Carstairs a couple summers ago. Curtis and a friend, and I went Silver Willow Sporting Clays,
Right.
and I was exactly the same thing. I'd never shot them before. I was a little bit worried I could get my ducks or whatever, and did well. We had a professional person that gave us the pointers and whatnot, and it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah.
I went into it. I was like, I'm gonna have fun. I'm shooting guns. This is gonna be a fun afternoon. But then after it, I was like,
I'm gonna buy shares in the ammunition company.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun doing it until I start realizing how much I end up spending on.
Oh, that's cool.
Shotgun
Good,
shots.
good for
But,
you. What a fun kind of event to. It's like the sportsman's golf.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. It's like that you go from station to station and you walk around and you chat in between in the holes or whatever, and then boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. So no, that was
Better than
a
golf.
great time. And then we got into the serious business. We had the AGM business meeting.
Resolutions, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all the resolutions, and here's an update on the strategic plan, and we're gonna adopt the financial statements, and all the point of order, Mr. Chair, that kind of stuff. But that was good. Like, it was great to have some conversations with folks around the table around here's the we talk about the FIC, and we talk about we have a podcast, we do all these things, but we have an Instagram account, but like, here's the nuts and bolts of what we're doing, and here's where we're trying to improve, and here's where we see growth potential and things like that. So, and then we had the thing that everybody looks forward to, the banquet and awards ceremony, which was really well attended by folks from both FIC membership and ATA membership. We had a lot of great folks join us there. Minister Todd Lowen was our keynote speaker. And MP Blaine Calkins, the Shadow Minister for Hunting, Fishing, and Conservation, he came and brought greetings on behalf of the feds. So always a great time with Blaine and with Mr. Lowen. So we had all in all a great time. We had some awards we gave out. We only had two. Unfortunately, of 5 awards, we only had 2 of the awardees actually there in person. Due to some travel changes at the last minute for some folks and some schedule conflicts, but we did award our Lloyd Cook Award. That's for promotion of trapping and trapping education, things like that. That went to Ross Hinter from ATA.
Oh,
who's a good friend of the Institute. He sits on our Trap Research Development Committee. Everybody knows Ross.
Great guy. He's been on our show before, so yeah.
Yeah, so was
good for him.
Was really great for Ross too. So congratulations, Ross, if he listens. I don't know if he listens. I'm gonna ask him. We presented the first FIC Lifetime Achievement Award. Went to a man so synonymous with trapping that his name is Trapper Gord. Went to Gord Clausen. So former FIC board member, former committee chair, former ATA president, I think. Done more trapping courses all over the world than just about anybody else out there. So it was great to be able to celebrate Gordy and Ross, and as well as folks that weren't able to be there.
And a smart businessman.
Yes.
Just like in the gold rush, the money was not made in finding the gold; it was selling the supplies to the gold miners.
Yeah. So no, that was the AGM went off. I won't say without a hitch, but went off as close to without a hitch as we could expect, and it was all thanks to the FIC team and the ATA team for getting that together for us, and we were generously supported by Government of Alberta and Alberta Trappers Association, Canadian Coyote Company, Marty Seneker, and Canadian Shooting Sports Association.
Cool.
All contributed to the AGM. Yep. So it was.
Now next year is in the Yukon. Do I remember that right?
So next year is in Ontario.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 2 years ago we were in the Yukon. So next
not
year
even close.
We're headed to Ontario. Not sure exactly where, not sure exactly when, but stay tuned.
Right on.
Fur.ca and Truth About Fur podcast to know when and where in Ontario.
It must have been tough for the Manitoba folks with the wildfires. Like, people have literally been displaced and communities evacuated and stuff. I would assume there was probably some some regrets out of Manitoba.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
feel
absolutely.
bad
Like I
for
say,
what's going on there.
everybody that wasn't there wanted to be there from the
Yeah,
Trappers
yeah,
Associations.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
it's a tricky time of year to travel
Yeah.
for a lot of folks. So,
Well,
like I
that's
say, hopefully
good.
next year we're higher than 6, and after that even higher, and get all the way to 11.
It's amazing. We're a big country, so I think what you're doing is awesome, bringing people together, and I think when the consistency is there, it's not like hit and miss. Some years, you do, you don't, or whatever. It's like it grows. I mean, it grows, right? And
That's been tricky for us, and
Ontario is going to be
for a
amazing.
lot of organizations coming out of
Yeah.
COVID, right, where we didn't have we had
yeah.
3 years without in-person AGMs. So, and then our first AGM, in-person AGM back was in the Yukon. So like it was more expensive, more difficult for folks to get to.
Yeah.
So we're certainly looking forward to big things in Ontario in 2026.
Super. The next item for you giving us an update, we talked about it last time. Since the last show, the FHA auction has taken place since then. What were the highlights?
Yeah, so certainly a lot of news going on right around the FIC AGM. The FHA auction was last week, as of this recording, was last week, the 16th to 19th of June. I'd say the big highlight to a lot of people was skunks. The thing everybody came out of the sale going, well, that wasn't unexpected.
Where did that come from?
Through the roof.
Watch out, skunks.
I think the average was like $88 or something. Like it was
really
wild prices on skunks. And I do that thing you get mad at me for doing, and click over to the auction results page and make sure I'm not completely inventing this numbers out of my head.
Now, I learned this off of a trapping show somewhere. Maybe you'll be able to communicate the truth about this, but I'm to understand that skunk, their fur quality holds year round.
Yeah, so the number was $79.96, almost $80 US.
Almost $80. Okay.
On skunks, and top lot was $95. So pretty good day for a skunk trapper.
Jeez, wow.
But yeah, skunk fur, as I understand it, having never trapped one myself, but I've got one just out of reach. I don't want to reach for it because I'll unplug my microphone. Does have, I'd say maintains a higher consistency across the course of the year than some other stuff does, where there's a real difference between prime fur and not prime fur.
Which is awesome because, in a lot of trapping situations, private land, farms and stuff, they're kind of dealing with them, from a conflict perspective, but to get full value or good value from their fur, if you're, getting them in the spring or throughout the summer, early fall, something like that, that's pretty cool. So
yeah, so
I tried to skin one once when I was young. I just was going to get the pelt tan. The taxidermist I work for, he goes, "No, they're beautiful pelts. You just, once you get them tanned up, the acids and stuff, there's no smell or whatever." And it's like, it didn't go so well.
Oh, no.
And did not know, right from wrong. Anyways, I ended up just getting the body out and took it to him in a bag and said, "If you want to finish it up, it's yours."
I give up. This is your problem.
Yeah, that was basically it. Yeah. So
yeah, so that was the headline for a lot of people.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Was skunks, and I've asked around a few folks in the trade, like, why skunks? Why now? And my understanding is from some folks in the trade is that it's for the tails primarily, and that they're used in certain traditional Jewish headwear. That's the in thing right now.
Really?
I'm not sure if it's the Hasidic community or the Orthodox Jewish community, but that there's a big demand right now. So I don't know if this is going to be sustained very long. But this is the moment in the market. Much as 10 years ago it was otters for a few years. Otter prices were through the roof. That's the the name of the game a couple of years ago, it was weasels for the coronation, and black bears for the bearskin caps for the royal guards before the Queen's funeral. We have these kind of peaks and valleys with some of this stuff. That isn't
like the stock market, and that's hard to predict.
Yeah, exactly. It's always tricky to time the market, whether the stock market or the fur market. But yeah, certainly a lot of folks that were sending in skunks that were going to be happy with a $20 skunk that are getting a fur check for a $90 skunk. So
no, good to hear. Now, one of the ones that we talked about in previous episodes that kind of had been surging was beaver. And so how was that trend? How did that shake out this time?
Yeah, so I think kind of in continuing the trend of the last couple of sales is, the beaver market was super, super hot. A year or two ago, the beaver market is cooling quite a bit. So I think beaver has kind of come back to earth a little bit compared to where it was maybe 2 years ago. It's a averaged eastern beavers averaged $20. So not those crazy giant prices that we were seeing a couple years ago. So
that's 1/8 of what it cost me in time to process one. So
I mean, that a lot of these things are cyclical. A lot of these things are tied to a moment in time. Sometimes
because we talked about like the beaver thing was tied to the big surge in cowboy hats, the Yellowstone movie, which is now killed off Dutton, or whatever. So I was like, nobody wants a cowboy hat anymore.
Yeah, we'll see how the spin-offs are. If the spin-offs are good, maybe the beaver market will get reinvigorated.
Okay. Coyotes still kind
of
disappointing.
Are still incredibly soft. Muskrat is still incredibly soft. Raccoon is still incredibly soft. There's some of these items that especially on coyote. I mean, coyote was speaking to the moment of fashion or trends. The good thing about coyote was the moment was years long. Maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years long. But now there just isn't the demand in the market for coyote, and there isn't the demand for muskrat in the market for coat liners and stuff, because there is still cheap compared to 10 years ago ranch mink in the market. So and raccoons, as long as the war continues in Ukraine, we're not going to have the raccoon market that we once did. The market for raccoons was really Russia and Ukraine. So some of these things, it's pretty tough because there's a lot of stuff that's a bit more specialized. Stuff like wolves still super strong, Wolverine still super strong. Even lynx cat was a little bit more inconsistent, kind of depended on what folks were looking for. There was strong demand at certain price points and softer demand at others. But those big volume items like muskrat, raccoon, and coyote were, 10, 15 years ago, there were a million of them going through NAFA and fur harvesters combined. There's not the demand. And unfortunate that's the case. And as always, best thing people can do to support their local coyote trapper, raccoon trapper, muskrat trapper is go buy coyote, raccoon, and muskrat items. But the Canadian, the listenership of Truth About Fur, unfortunately, is not going to move the global fur market on these items. It is unfortunate.
But I mean, you got to try and stuff, and it would just be so cool to have more of the cottage industries in Canada, where we're making mittens from coyotes for Canadian kids while they're waiting for the school bus, at the stop in Saskatchewan in winter, just like that type of stuff, or the beavers that are stretched onto the willow hoops, which is you know, a art piece for the ski chalet and, you know, like wherever. And, you know, they're like $700 or $300 or whatever, or the pillows, we've talked about those before, like the value of a couple of pillows versus, you know, a pelt in the auction. But, you know, it's, you know, somebody's got to invest in those as a business. You got to have the sewing equipment. You got to have the training. You got to market, you know, the materials, and like anything, labor, you know, is tough. But, yeah, like a co-op, you know, cottage industry fur thing and stuff would be would it be a beautiful thing for Canada?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for folks that are listening out there, there are resources out there. You can go to fur.ca/where to buy fur. And if you ride a $50,000 sled, you can spend $700 on a nice pair of gauntlets.
Gauntlet. Yeah, true. Yep.
It's, you know, if you want to be warm out there, on your sled, there's no better way than with fur. So,
I got a bit of an idea around that. I know somebody had her on the podcast before. She's in Alberta. She's Hunter. She's a sponsored, like, sledder, motocross racer, desert off-road vehicle racer, whatever. And it's like, if somebody wanted to be like a, you know, pro snowmobile stuff and all of their promotional videos, to have some coyote gauntlets on or something, maybe we just need someone to step forward and say, I will give these if you use these, you know. And then people are like, oh my gosh, it's like the movie stars, you know, or the whatever, like somebody steps out and does it and they're like, oh my gosh, right? Like they're okay with it. And then, so maybe we need to start that happening. So.
No, for sure. So that's
cool.
that's
good.
kind of where things are right now for the wild fur market. I mean,
Martin Sable. How?
Sable, I think was consistent. You know, the Sable, the June sale is generally a bit softer than the March sale. So I think Sables were down like 5% from the March sale to the June sale, which is great, like compared to other years, and still super strong demand globally. I think in Mark Downey's you know, rundown of the sale, he said, you know, the buyers are asking for double and triple the number of Sables. So I think that global demand right now on Sables is very, very strong, and
they're just a bread and butter species. And you know, we've touched on this a bit before, but it's controversial with the antis in Alberta, but it's one of the things I really support Minister Todd Lowen in Alberta when he removed quota off a bunch of animals, because I saw a number of trappers in Alberta say, like, now they're able to more effectively manage their fisher populations and balance out their marten populations. And, you know, that's just a good biodiversity management thing, like to not have one species literally drive the other out of existence in an area, but a trapper can maintain populations of both, so they can capitalize on, you know, getting more and bringing their marten populations up. And it's a dependable, you know, reasonably dependable market, regardless of what's going on in the world. Like I'm super stoked for Alberta trappers and their path forward that the minister has given them to be true fur managers. So
right,
absolutely on. Cool. Next story, European Union invasive species listing for mink. What's going on there?
Yeah, so this is probably the biggest news of the show, and in a lot of ways, this might be the biggest news in fur this year that we're still really trying to wrap our heads around. In a lot of ways, is the EU manages invasive species, what they call invasive alien species, at the EU level. Like, there is a list of these are the invasive species in the EU, and then there's particular, like, national level enforcement, you know, actions that are taken, or management actions that are taken. And for a long time, there has been a push primarily by anti-groups, to be honest, to list American mink as an invasive alien species in the European Union. So all the mink that's farmed in Europe is quote unquote American mink, like Neogal vison, the Linnaean name. They're the North American mink. Like there is a wild species called the European mink. That's not what they farm. They farm broodstock that originated in North America at some point, and which stands to reason because we invented mink farming. Americans tried it. It didn't work. Canadians perfected it. And then we exported it to Europe and around the world. So there are, in certain areas, due to farm escapes / releases, there are places where there are American mink on the landscape in Europe.
Gee, I wonder who's released them out of the farms.
much the same as there are certain areas where there are raccoons and muskrats and other things on the landscape. And so there was a very strong push this year to list American mink, and Sika deer was the other one. They were both came at the same time, to put them on the list for invasive alien species. And basically what this kicks off is now the national governments need to decide what are they going to do. Because basically there's a 2-year phase in, and then there's a 2-year permitting window. And then the national governments can then choose to issue permits within those 2 years to existing mink farms. But really what this does is it limits the footprint of mink farming in Europe. Because under these regulations, existing mink farms will, because it's now on the invasive alien species list, existing mink farms in Europe will not be able to expand, and they will not be able to open new farms. So basically they've put a ceiling on the mink industry in Europe.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the undertones here trying to drive them out of business. Like I get it with the invasive species. Like these things get loose, they get in the wild, they wreak havoc on native, bird species and whatnot. And, New Zealand has the same thing with the stoats, and it's just, and feral cats, and like they just, they're hard on native wildlife, and they deal with them. So that's outside of a captivity situation, and it's a listed species, invasive species, and basically it's like you find one, you can kill it. Like there's no hunting seasons or trapping seasons on them. I get that from a conservation perspective, but I mean, if you think about every single animal that's in captivity, yes, if it's managed in captivity, which is where our laws should be focused on what it takes to contain these things and keep them healthy and not spread diseases or be in contact with native species. It's like everything from a goldfish to like a goat or a cow. It's like, if it gets out of captivity, you now have a species that's going to go out into the environment and cause problems. That's the definition. It's not invasive when it's in a farm. It's when it gets into a natural environment. So like from a conservationist perspective, I'm like, why doesn't the EU focus on like security of these facilities?
Yeah.
And the whole
I mean,
wild
security...
pig thing in Canada was like that. And Alberta said, right, okay, you want to be an operator, we're going to permit you, but you need a 4,500 volt electric fence around these facilities.
Right.
Like that to me makes sense.
Yeah. And certainly there's been major increases in security on farms over the last decade or two because of, honestly, because of people trying to get in as much as because of the animals trying to get out.
The terrorists. Yeah.
So that's kind of, this is, in a lot of ways, this is a day late and a dollar short if what you are actually concerned about is invasive species. This is another step by anti-fur groups finding, instead of just attacking us head on, they find the flank to come in and get us. And
that's what I see, what you said about like they can't expand like right off the bat. That's kind of the, like you said, that ceiling, and then you can ratchet things down, right? No expansion. Then it's the next thing it's going to be is like maximum number of animals that a facility can have. And
so I mean, we'll see what now happens at kind of the state level with different states. I mean, especially the states where mink farming is still important, places like Poland, places like Finland, places like Greece, Denmark to a lesser extent. It's not that, the permits that get issued may be 30 years long. They may be 50 years long. There's a lot of, misinformation out there going around from the antis saying like this is the end of mink farming in 2 years in Europe, or in 4 years, sorry, because 2 years to phase out and 2 years to get permits, and no one will get permits, and this is the end of mink farming. Yay, look at us, we're great. I don't think that will be the case. But this is a major kind of fork in the road moment for the trade, in a trade that has had a lot of like major fork in the road moments in the last 10 years. Probably more major fork in the road moments than really we would have liked to see. So, we'll see how, and here across the pond, we're kind of just watching and waiting and seeing what happens, because, we're not going to face the same pressure here in North America because they're not an invasive species. They're from here.
But what happens is then that becomes a sponsored bill in some state in the U.S. and they try to plant the flag. Now, who's sort of leading the charge in the EU to be countering and on behalf of all of the industries?
Yeah, so certainly the International Fur Federation has been playing a big role in this, as has Fur Europe and the European Fur Breeders Association. They're really they've led the charge against this, and it was just unfortunately we have to win every time. The other side only has to win once, right? So this was this was not their first kick at the can. They haven't been successful other occasions, but unfortunately this time they did get enough support from enough states around the table to do this, and that's really unfortunate. And we're gonna have to see kind of what the ripple effects are on this over the next year or two. Of even though there's a 4-year phase in and permitting period, we may see states just say, at the end of 2 years we're done, or at the end of 4 years we're done.
Wow. Okay. So this definitely sounds like a story that we're not. It's not a one and done.
This will be followed up on, I'm sure.
We'll bring news back to the show on that, because this does sound like it's going to be generating a lot of news. Okay. Well, that's not a good news story, but it's important. I think the thing is like, we're primarily serving the industry in Canada. We've said right from the outset we will step outside of the Canadian borders to peek into what's going on elsewhere in the world. Fur Institute is involved in some international stuff as well. We want to bring that back to the table just to holistically, so the trappers and furriers that follow the show just understand the pulse of their industry globally, because we certainly don't want people to be caught unawares, in our country.
Yeah.
And I think it just holistically makes us all better at being professionals when we understand, the big picture down to the local area. So now the next two kind of topic stories are on this theme. They're outside of Canada. We spoke about this on the last show, the Rhode Island ban. What's the update there? Yeah,
so a bit of good news after the bad news of the last one is the most recent attempt to ban trade of fur and sale of fur in Rhode Island has failed. So the Senate, the Rhode Island Senate, chose not to hear the bill on banning fur. Said this is not a priority for us. We're not going to put this on the docket. So the attempts to try and ban fur in Rhode Island have failed. So full kudos to IFF and our friends at American Fur Council for winning another one. And but still kind of a stay vigilant message of, this wasn't the first time they tried it. It won't be the last time they try it. It probably will be in Rhode Island again, or Hawaii. This kind of small jurisdiction targeting is a very clear and telegraphed strategy that the antis are using of, well, let's just go somewhere out of the way where no one's paying attention and try and get the ban through, and then we can say, hey, a state banned fur. So yeah, the attempt by Rhode Island, by the antis in Rhode Island to try and drive a wedge between trappers and fur farmers failed.
I mean, it wasn't really a smart move for them, because Rhode Island is small, but it's high profile, because everything in the world where they're talking about something to do with the scale of something in nature is always related back to how many Rhode Islands that is. Like a chunk of debris floating down the Amazon River is actually twice the size of Rhode Island. So it's like, it's a pretty prestigious, high profile state. So that worked against them. So, I mean, nobody's like, this is like 3 Vermonts or something like that. So, so hey, we'll take a win however we get them.
Yeah.
Colorado, there's a proposal back on the table.
So this one is interesting, because this is kind of the inverse of what we were just talking about in Rhode Island. Is there's a rulemaking petition in Colorado, and I'm not super in depth on my American legislative procedure, but essentially they are petitioning the Colorado Fish and Wildlife Commission to ban sale of wild fur, not farm fur. So completely the opposite. Rhode Island, they were like, well, we're just going to try and ban farm fur and trappers will stay out of it. This time they're going at it completely the opposite direction. Different groups. This is the CBD, the Center for Biological Diversity. Not to be confused with the other CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, which is international.
Yeah, they probably use that too, which is why they come up with these colorful plans.
It's
they were involved in the cougar hound hunting thing.
Yeah, they're tied up in a lot of this stuff, especially in the Western U.S. I find they tend to have their fingers into everything.
Because last year there was a proposition, I think it was for the city of Denver. There was a ballot initiative to ban like anything fur feathers. And so that it was like the fly tying shops, we had talked about this before, like all the cowboy hats that are in Denver that are booming, with their business and stuff. And that got defeated in the election in November 7th or whenever it was. But same with the hunting ban, the hound hunting, cougar hunting ban in Colorado that got defeated, Proposition 117. That's firing up again. Like they're coming back at different angles. Coloradans are back at the table fighting some sort of like backdoor way of coming at, the way wildlife should be managed or whatever as a way to get hunting out. So I definitely think this fur ban one that you just described here is part and parcel of this second wave in Colorado coming after trapping and hunting.
Yeah, and this one is very clearly and unabashedly a response to the failure of the Denver ban, because the petition says we want you to ban sale of wild fur except for cowboy hats and hand-tied flies. And it's like, okay, I see. Like they're not even subtle about it, right? It's just like completely, and this is something that kind of really, I will admit, gets under my skin from anti-fur groups, is when anti-fur groups try and adopt the language and or the values of the outdoors community and try and leverage them against fur. Because part of their petition is that the commercial fur trade violates the values of the North American model of wildlife conservation, which is probably news to every trapper, every fur buyer, everybody who's ever written about the North American model of wildlife conservation. There's some great material out there from our friends at AFWA, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, explaining exactly how fur is an important part of the North American model of wildlife conservation. And it's that kind of stuff that really just kind of rankles me a little bit more than just...
Yeah, no, I get the same thing on the hunting side where people try to leverage the tenet of the North American model of market hunting. People have in the hunting community have adopted this narrative that, oh, what that means is if you make money off of this, then you're going against the North American model of wildlife conservation, and that is wrong. The tenet is that there's an end to markets for wildlife. So that was the uncontrolled, unregulated exploitation of ducks, pigeons, deer, bears, everything to go into meat markets. No quotas, the duck farmer or the duck hunters, the commercial duck hunters that had the punt guns where they're like shooting 50, 60, 100 ducks in one shot. That's what they were talking about. It was the unregulated markets driving commercial exploitation that the North American model ended, because that's what was driving all the animals to extinction. The feathers of egrets were actually worth more per ounce than gold in the late 1800s, and it was almost drove the white egret to extinction. The reason that, as I understand it, where trapping has never been considered, because it's like the same as hunting. It's regulated. And where hunters try to do it is if you have like a guide outfitter who you're paying you're profiting. That's market hunting. No, it's not. It's fully regulated. It's within the boundaries of conservation and sustainability. You have quotas, and trapping has always been defended. Like, yes, you're making money off of it, but it's regulated. It's science-based. It has quotas. It has seasons. It integrates sustainability. It integrates conservation principles. And therefore, that's not what the North American model was saying that is bad if you have market hunting. So bit of an education thing there, or whatever. Shane Mahoney's book that he helped author a few years ago has a good section on how trapping fits into the North American model. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, one of those is like, okay, Center for Biological Diversity. Yeah. Great. So now you support the North American model of wildlife conservation? Like, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, your interpretation of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think what they're doing there is they're clearly using that, like you said, to borrow from sportsman's language to divide our communities. Going, oh, well, they're right. I can't afford a trap line in British Columbia, and I don't have one, but this person does, and they had a lot of money because they sold their business and they paid $100,000 for this little cabin and trapping tenure or whatever, and they spend all their time out there, and I can't do that, so I'm again. Oh yeah, no, the North American model. That and they're looking for those people that kind of have they're disgruntled in the hunting community. Yeah. They're disgruntled against someone that has a trap line, someone that is an outfitter, someone that is a social media influencer that is paid to hunt or whatever. So they've tapped into that. They're seeing that element of disgruntled division within the hunting and trapping community. So let's use this as a wedge. We've seen the same thing hunting grizzly bears in BC. There was a segment of hunters that no, we shouldn't be hunting those animals. So they were able to bring hunters over.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that here in Nova Scotia last year with the spring bear hunt. Where
the spring bear hunt.
People saying, oh, I hunt deer. I don't see why you need to hunt bears in the spring.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, well, we'll stay on top of that one because there is developments going on in Colorado and on both fronts, on trapping and hunting or whatever. And it's like, where did these foundations like CBD get their money from? And that's, this is a really poignant message. What FIC is doing, what we're trying to do on all fronts, we're trying to scrape up, nickels and dimes to keep doing what we're doing. These anti-groups are tied into philanthropic foundations all over the world. They have business incubators that they put these groups into to develop plans, concoct evidence to support campaigns. They're called interventions. And the money, I did some digging in this a month ago, and millions and millions and millions of dollars are pouring out of these philanthropic foundations that go into, there's social stuff, human rights stuff. There's, people and their way of life and poverty and all that. Nothing wrong with that. But next to the human poverty stuff globally, animal welfare is one of the most funded, targeted campaigns that you could start up and get connected with, like literally tens of millions of dollars to run these campaigns. But we try to raise money for what we're doing and standing up for trapping and hunting. And, and people are like, well, it's really tight in the family and I can't really afford to, to give anything like your show, but, can't really afford. And well, we're up against billionaires that are funding this stuff. So the long-term sustainability of that model is not good if that doesn't change. So
it can be kind of disheartening to think about, like, what are all the great things we could do if we had that money that the Andes do?
Yeah.
Right?
So
the constructive things we could do with
exactly. I'm not bringing this up to like this, but what I'm saying is this is an issue. They're well funded. We're not. We can use your help because every single person out there knows people. They know people that have businesses. They're in the oil industry in Alberta. They're like whatever. It's that network and that community of somebody, going to their employer, that's going to a friend who at a golf tournament who's a business person or whatever. It's like, that's how, hey, have you ever thought about, tax donation, whatever. And, I think we can collectively benefit if everybody out there was thinking that way, rather than, we're needing a percentage of your, small salary every year. But it's like, who do you know?
Exactly. Like we don't expect every single person to have deep pockets and give us the last cent in those pockets. But like, if you know someone who does,
yeah. Like if you know a billionaire who loves hunting and fishing and trapping and they're retired and they have a foundation, let them know about us.
Oh yeah. If they've got the family, the family foundation, where they've moved all their funds to seek preferential tax treatment. Like, listen, we're willing to have a conversation.
Yeah, tell them about this podcast. Yeah. So that's what we're asking. That's the sales pitch here in this episode. So, okay, awesome. I have a couple items, just agenda items I just wanted to go over. Crazy story out of Victoria in Australia. There are folks calling for the crackdown on the importation of products that are made from cat fur. So Victoria, Australia banned over 20 years ago the importation of products that are made from cat and dog fur.
Yeah.
Didn't know that was a thing. The whole cat thing doesn't bother me. I'm not a cat fan. But anyways, they're claiming, some group down there is claiming that like they found cat fur products that have slipped through. Apparently the border services in Australia said, as far as we know, nothing has slipped through the borders into the country that are in contravention of that ban for 20 years ago. But I just thought that was a kind of a freaky story because of what the conversation is about is cat fur. So anyways, that was an interesting one. And kind of the last little topic I just wanted to close out with is I've been doing some reading about Frank Conibear.
Right.
And what I found super interesting is it took him over 30 years of his life to perfect and advance and get the buy-in of his fellow trappers across the country. That one person revolutionized trapping as we know it today. And if you want to talk about any one single person that's done something for humane trapping as opposed to trying to get it banned, it's that man. And he developed something and had perseverance over a good portion of his life to create the most humane killing trap that exists out there. And the message I wanted to leave people is that tradition continues. with people that are perfecting killing snares, that are people that are trying to solve all types of problems. I commend what you're doing in your basement, testing, buying materials, bending wires, and trying to make something, build a better mousetrap. That's how stuff gets to the Vegreville facility, eventually is through innovation that comes from trappers. 30 years is a big portion of your life to take a vision through to something that changed an entire industry worldwide, really. So don't give up. If you got something out in the shed that you're working on or whatever, keep at it.
Yeah.
Hey, if you are, reach out to us.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
we can get you onto the show and talk about a concept and get a conversation going. Send us what you're working on, show us a picture or whatever. Let's get that onto the show, because that might get a whole bunch of people going, hey, and connect two and two and dots together. And the next thing you know, we've revolutionized the next, Conibear trap kind of thing. So cool story though. Cool guy. Great story. Just wanted to bring that up. And as an analog to everybody, to every trapper out there that's working on something in their basement, trying to do something better, or their shed, keep up. We know you're doing it, and you're the ones that are going to make a difference of humane trapping. And ultimately, that's the stuff that guys like Doug and the international organizations take to legislators and say, no, this is what we've done as an industry. This is why it's not cruel. This is why it's not inhumane. That then causes these bills and campaigns and stuff to get canceled and not get voted on, by legislators. So keep at it. And if you're working on something really cool, let us know. I actually worked on it a couple years ago to figure out how to deal with this issue around where I live in southeastern BC of grizzly bears getting their foot stuck in marten traps or whatever. So I kind of came up with a dual cable thing that you could go around the back of a big tree. And if the bear stuck his foot into the paw, got it across. So the problem is the bear gets it like a 140 across the toes in between the digits, and it can't get up over that hump.
Right.
And so I just did. I was like, well, there's the whole thing where the trapper can have the little piece of rope, especially with the big 330s, and compress the springs and get yourself out of it and save your life. So I actually did a little thing and kind of proved it, that if you had that cable on the springs, a bear could be pulling back against that on the tree, decompress the springs, and actually pop his foot out. Wasn't the greatest thing from the trappers that looked at it going, yeah, I got all these extra cables and kind of stuff or whatever. But it was like there's this issue. The government's trying to regulate trappers over it. My position was, let trappers solve the problem. They will figure it out. And I don't have the experience that most of you all have. And it's I just kind of found a little innovative way that it could be done. So keep at it. And the next Frank Conibear is listening out there somewhere, and it's going to have the FIC's Lifetime Achievement Award here pretty quick.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, great show. Thanks for bringing us up to speed on all of the past events since the last show. And yeah, folks, reach out to us. You got something you want us to cover, share with whatever. We can add all kinds of stories from the field, things that you're seeing, things that you're concerned about or whatever. This platform is yours too. So engage with us and let us know some things that we can add to the show.
Yeah. Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Doug's not shy. I'm not shy. We'll do whatever. We just want to have a good product for y'all. So thanks for listening, and we'll see y'all in the next episode.